Greetings Commanders, this is Cree here and I'm an Elite Dangerous content creator. If you'd like to catch me live, then you can catch me at twitch.tv/Cree, where we have weekly events all for the community. The main one being Fair Dinkum Friday, where we come together to kill Thargoids to make millions or even possibly billions of credits. But today's video is a combat type 10 defender. I'll be going through what modules are best suited for beginners, as well as I'll be talking about some options, as well as the really important power priority for this build, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. Now without further ado, let's get into the hardpoints. So for the hardpoints, for the 4 class 3s, I've put in 3C gimbaled multi-cannons. For the 3 class 2, I've put in 2F gimbaled multi-cannons. So that is 7 multi-cannons altogether. That's a lot, but it's for good reason. And then for the last 2 class 1s, I've got in 2 1E gimbaled beam lasers. Now the reason why I've set up my hardpoints like this is because in the build there will be ship launched fighters. And this will help you out with getting the shields down of your opponent, which is why the majority of the hardpoints in this ship are multi-cannons, where the multi-cannons being kinetic, they take out the hull faster than beams would. And the reason why I've gone with gimbaled as well is to help with your aim. But do keep in mind that if your enemy uses a chaff launcher, that means that your gimbaled weapons will be scattered. So in that case, if you would prefer to have something as being fixed, so that you have to worry about the chaff launcher of your enemy, then I would suggest having your beam lasers as fixed. Next is the utility mounts. For the utility mounts, there are 8 spots, and for all of them I have A-rated shield boosters. This is obviously so we can get the most out of our shields as we possibly can. So filling them up with shield boosters is definitely the way to go. However, if you'd like to play around a bit and try some heat sinks or chaff launchers yourself or any other module, then you can go for it, but I would certainly suggest having the A-rated shield boosters. Next is the core internal. Now for your armor, I've gone with a 1A military grade composite. This is because of the 250% hull boost. I think the military grade really works for what the build is about. The power plant is an 8A. This is because we need as much power as we possibly can. If you do want to make sure that you get more power out of this, then you can engineer it, but if you haven't got up to that, that is totally fine. Which is why I had mentioned earlier that we'll be having a look at the power priority, which is really important with this build. For the thrusters, I've gone with 7A. Because this is a type 10 defender, it is one of the biggest, chunkiest ships that Elite Dangerous has to offer, which means that it moves like a space whale. And so to combat that even just a little bit, we've got the A-rated thrusters on this ship. Now for the frame shift drive, I've gone with 7A as per usual. This is so that we can get the most amount of jump range as we possibly can for a ship, just to make it a bit easier when you are traveling around. Now for the life support, I've gone with 5D to keep it light for that jump range. And with the life support time being 7.5 minutes, if you do go to LHS 317, like I've mentioned in my previous videos, then that is more than enough time for you to get to the station from the resource extraction sites that are super close to the main station. Next is the power distributor. Naturally, I've gone with a 7A. This is so that we can get the most out of the capacity and recharge rate of the weapons, engines and systems to help with our pip management a bit more when we're in different situations. Now lastly, I've gone with 4A sensors. I would normally derate this just to save on jump range, but I've decided to A-rate it just so I can get a bit more of a range and angle and such with my sensors, which I do feel it has helped. So it is up to you if you decide to A-rate or D-rate your sensors. Next is the optional Eternal. I've gone with 8A shield generator. So obviously this is so I can get the most out of my shields, like I've gone with the military grade armor, because I'm trying to keep this as bulky as I possibly can, but also deal out a lot of damage. So going with 8A I feel is really good, even though bioweaves do charge faster, they do go down faster, and with how I've built this, I think a 7A is better than the bioweaves in this situation. Next, I've gone with a 7A auto field maintenance unit. This is kind of optional. This is a module that is used for repairing modules. However, you can swap this out for more hull or just leave it out in general to save on some power. Next, I've gone with a 6D fighter hangar. Now for the fighter hangar here, this is going to be really helpful for you. As I had mentioned before, you do only have 2 beam lasers, but with this 6D fighter hangar, you do actually have 2 fighter ships that you can have in this fighter hangar. And we'll get into what fighter ships you can use and how that is definitely going to help you more so with taking down your opponent's shields. Next I have a 5A fuel scoop. So because this ship doesn't have a very large jump range, it's definitely a good idea to have a fuel scoop on this ship, just in case you need to fuel off a star, because there's no stations that you can fuel up. And plus you can save time doing it this way as well. For the next 2 class 5s, I've got 5D hull reinforcements, obviously for boosting up your hull, as it sounds. I've done the same with the class 4s, so I've got 2 hull reinforcements in there. Now as for the 2 class 3s, I have a hull reinforcement in one and a Guardian frame shift drive booster in the other. Now if you haven't done any Guardian work yet, then what you could do is that you can swap that out for another hull reinforcement or a module reinforcement. It is completely up to you. But the reason why I have the Guardian frame shift drive booster on here is because it does give you an extra 10 light years jump range. And lastly, for the class 2, I have a module reinforcement. I do suggest that you have at least 1, if not maybe 2 module reinforcements. And then lastly, we have an advanced docking computer. So this is just to make things a bit easier for you, because the Type 10 is quite large, then docking is a bit easier. Now on to vehicle bays. Now as I had mentioned before, these ship launch fighters will definitely help you out with taking down your opponent's shields. This is because the Galad F-type Taipans have 2 fixed beams and a heatsink that help take out your opponent's shields. Now even though these are a little bit slower than the other ship launch fighters, they actually are one of the toughest. So I would suggest having these 2 over the others because of those reasons. Also note that you have 8 rebuilds for both of them, so 16 altogether. Once you have run out of those, you'll need to dock at a station in order to have those restocked. Now as for the fire groups, there isn't a lot that you need to really take into account. The only thing is that I, generally speaking, have my thermal weapons on my primary fire and my kinetic weapons on my secondary fire, just in case I wanted to focus on more shields or hull when I'm fighting, essentially. And as for the other fire groups, for the utilities, data link, composition and discovery scanners, those are completely up to you. I personally have my discovery scanner on its own, and then the composition and data link scanners on the first and then primary in their respective fire groups. Now on to the power priority. As I had mentioned before, this is important because, as you can see, the output is always going to be 100%, but with this build, the usage exceeds that at 116%. So we need to kind of choose what modules we want to shut down when we have our hardpoints deployed. So I will go through what I have. First off, thrusters, I always have them on 1. Priority 1 is something that you need on all the time. So thrusters, life support, things like that are going to be on priority 1. Shield generator, I've got that on 1 as well. The auto field maintenance unit is on 3. Same with the Guardian frame shift drive, that is on 3 as well. All my shield boosters, they are on 1. Sensors I have on 1 as well because we use them all the time. As you can see, for the weapons, the multi-cannons and the beam lasers will be on priority 2. Because this is obviously something we're not going to use all the time, but we don't want it to shut off either. So we need to have those on priority 2. The frame shift drive I do have on priority 3, so obviously when the multi-cannons and beams are out, this will shut off. But as soon as you retract them, they will turn on. So if you are getting into a bit of strife, then you can retract your hardpoints, boost away as fast as you can, while the frame shift drive is turning back on. It'll only be a second or so. Power distributor, priority 1. Makes sense as to why that would be on priority 1. Fuel scoop, that is on priority 3, because we're only going to be using that when we're in Super Cruise anyway, so having that on priority 3 really makes sense. More multi-cannons on priority 2. Life support, obviously, going to be priority 1. Beam lasers, because they are weapons, they are on priority 2. Cargo hatch, because we don't have any cargo or anything like that, so there's no point in even having it on. So we can either just deactivate it or put it on priority 3. Advanced docking computer, I have that on priority 3 as well, because you're only going to be using that when you're not in a combat situation anyway, so you might as well turn it off when you've got the hardpoints out. Fighter hangar, because this is, I suppose, a weapon in a way, then having this on priority 2 makes sense so that you have it available while you have your weapons out. Now, as you can see, for the rest of the modules, because the power usage is 0%, it doesn't actually require any priority because there's 0% power usage. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please consider subscribing, liking my video, and let me know in the comments below what you think about it, if you made any changes, and whether or not you actually think this is a good build. I'm always happy to learn new builds, so let me know. Here is a video that YouTube thinks that you'll like. I'll see you over there, Commanders. Fly safe.